Good afternoon. We'll bring you a second installment of Justice for All. Today, with a slant, alternative sentencing. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I am Hannah Faye. I am from Adesso. I was incarcerated together with my mother and sister. We went to farm to get some maize. We were trying to locate the farm owner to ask for permission.
The testimony of an inmate of the Nsawam prison who was convicted for allegedly stealing half a sack of maize. She shares her cell with her mom and another sibling who had accompanied them to a neighbor's farm that fateful day.
We were sent to the police station, processed for court and sentenced. We were to serve our sentence at the Nsawam prison. We pleaded that we have children and that my sister was carrying a baby, but that didn't yield much. We are in prison with my sister's child.
The
child is with us at the prison also.
Her story reflects the state of Ghana's judicial system, overcrowding, inmates remanded without trial, and long jail terms handed people for crimes many consider minor dominates discussions on custodial sentences. The forum brought together the Chief Justice Sophia Kufu, representatives from the Interior Ministry, Police and Prison Service. CJ Sophia Kufu urged the convict to appeal the sentence.
So there can be an application to the supervising High Court judge to review the sentence, not the conviction, but the sentence. Or there can be appeal. Appeals take a longer time. These applications can be within 48 hours. So I think your paralegal person should even have been able to draw up one of those applications on her behalf. And it's better that we deal with these situations rather than, as soon as we come across them, rather than just, create opportunities for sensationalization. Not that I'm criticizing, but all I'm saying is that, so what did Post Foundation and your paralegals, what did you do? Because this is such a simple matter, and it could have been resolved. So please, I'm expecting you to act on it, and next week by this time, things would have been sorted out.
Deputy Commissioner of Shraj, Richard Kwesin, called for a swift passage of the law regulating non-custodial sentence.
And though somebody may describe the offense as stealing and therefore the punishment is imprisonment, I still believe that that is not our sense of what is fair, what is just, and what is decent. And for this reason, I believe that all of us here should take this morning's exercise very seriously and do what is needful. 2 decades of discussions and consultations on non-custodial sentencing should end somewhere.
Similar stakeholder engagements are expected to be organized in other parts of the country.
You're welcome back. Here in the studio, I have Sylvester Anthony Appiah Honey. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us on The Law.
Good afternoon, Samson, and a good afternoon to your listeners.
Great. So he, together with Jonathan Osei Owusu, whom you know very well, whom you saw in that video, are with the Post Foundation, facilitators of the Justice for All program. Jonathan Owusu is the founder and executive director. Jonathan, thanks for joining us. Also joining us is Mina Mensah, Director, Africa Office of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative. She's been on this program a number of times as we talk about indigent persons, people who are just poor, can't afford, and the system deals with them so harshly. So let me begin with you, Mina, by giving me a commentary of what we just played to you a couple of years ago when the CJ, Sofa Akufu was the CJ. I'm sure you also saw in the picture Richard Kwasin, may his soul rest in perfect peace. And he said the campaign for non-custodial sentencing over 2 decades, that's not good enough. Are you getting tired? Are you weary? Because particularly your office, you have also been trying to help rescue people who go to jail for very petty offenses because they can't pay small fines.
Good afternoon, Samson, and good afternoon to your listeners. Hi, Jonathan. Hi, Sylvester. Samson, it's not just, I'm getting overtired because it's been the same story over and over and over. And it seems to be escalating in recent times, regardless of the advocacy going on. People get arrested for all kinds of funny offenses. They are detained at police stations, even with the ruling that even over the weekends, people ought to be given bail. Some police stations are just adamant. They will not grant the people bail, and they will not send them to court either. And in recent times, we are being told that there is an administrative process that is going on at the courts, that you should necessarily go to court for a date to bring suspects to court. And I asked them, so how does that fit into the 48-hour rule? Because at the end of the day, if you need to go to court, to the registrar, for the registrar to give you a date, and the police normally say that sometimes it takes a week for them to get that date, then what are we doing? Are administrative processes higher than what the Constitution says? So I'm not just getting tired, I'm getting overtired of 10 steps forward and 20 steps backwards.
I can file a process in the court's registry today and get a date for the next day. In fact, sometimes I can file the same day and get my process heard by a judge on the same day. So you don't have to believe them.
Well, you can, but tell somebody who is clueless, doesn't know the law, hasn't got access to a lawyer, and is being kept at the police station, and paralegals go there and the police say, this is what it is. And if some of them even tell us that, Madam, we would like you to take this thing up because it makes our work difficult. So you are Samson, and a lawyer is a lawyer, but those people in there, they are not lawyers. They don't even know that they have a right to some of these things. They think it's the norm. So that is the challenge that we are having. And there are not enough people to even go to the police stations to ensure that the police are doing the right things. Because at CHRI, for instance, we have very few paralegals. And so we do very few police stations in Accra. And it's in between. We can't do it every day because we don't have the resources to do that.
Right.
So this is the challenge.
Right. But what I was driving at,
I think that we've been making noise since 2000, like the late Mr. Kwasin said.
Yeah.
I mean, we are talking about the same thing over and over and over and over, and nothing seems to be moving.
All right, so we will get to that subject specific and focus on it a lot more. But the point I was driving at was that some of the police officers may tell a lie in the name of an excuse and try to blame it on the court or the registry of the court, because it's untenable to say that it will take me 1 week or 2 weeks to get a date from the registrar when I file a process. Jonathan, thank you once again for joining us. What does this story remind you?
Absolutely.
And this was a stakeholders meeting that the Pulse Foundation organized. What does this story remind you? Hi, Jonathan. Unmute your mic.
Oh, I see. Sorry about that.
You are clear now. Let's go ahead.
Yes, greetings to your viewers and good to have you again. I would have loved to be there, From Kumasi, I have to park somewhere. So please let viewers forgive me. So we go straight to the subject on the table. If you look at the stakeholder workshop, that was the first ever workshop that was handled by stakeholders with a draft bill of non-custodial sentence. And if you heard the Chief Justice on that day, the Chief Justice, including other stakeholders, came after our deliberations. We all realized that we have pockets of alternatives to incarceration in our laws, from fine to suspension of sentence. There are several pockets of them.
Caution.
But what? Yes. And so what was missing was community service. And so we decided to narrow the conversation to amending the Criminal Offences, Other Offences and Procedure Act, so we can pave way for a Community Service Act to be brought on board. And that was the first stakeholder consultation, of which we, with Open Society Foundation, handled with support from Ministry of Interior at the time. So I am saying this to buttress the comment of Mr. Kwesi to say that there had been a lot of advocacy or campaign to get the law, but it was rhetoric.
In fact, as far back as 2001. 2000 and is it 2001? There was the one organized by the CDD.
Yes,
where you had the Attorney General. I think Sophia Kufu was also part of that meeting then.
So you can imagine. So it was the stretch that began. Then we got CDD on board. Then Paul's Foundation came in. Then CHRI came in. So you can just imagine the process. The bill went. The discussion or the advocacy. The process it went through. But fortunately, there is a bit of hope in the sense that after the first draft community service bill, the Ministry of Interior made it a priority. The only challenge is, ministries have challenge with funding. And so when they have support from civil society, the ministry supported us to go for regional public consultation where the bar were brought on board, judges from the regions, legal aid, local government. And so we now have a bill currently before cabinet. And if we don't take time to push it, and I really appreciate the platform you have given us, Samson, if we don't get it in the next 2-3 months, obviously, we are going to go back again with the new parliament to start the process all over again. So I am happy that this is a timely interview that you are having with us, so that stakeholders, including the minister...
Hold on, Jonathan, I'll come back to you. So I remember a year ago, too, we had to do several series of this program to revive the debate. And that was solely through the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative with support from the, I think, USAID. And we had to go back to the abandoned bill. And the Attorney General committed to reviving it and getting it back on the front burner. From your work, how important is alternative sentencing, regime, an alternative sentencing regime, like non-custodial sentencing, community sentencing?
Thank you very much, Samson, and a very good afternoon to your viewers once again. Alternative sentencing is important because if you check the trend of punishment, it has evolved. So first we're looking at punitive, retributive, among those things. But now it has...
An eye for an eye,
exactly.
A tooth for a tooth.
Exactly. And it will leave you blind because an eye for an eye, But now if you check, we are shifting from retributive to restoration and then reintegration.
Restorative justice.
Exactly. Unfortunately, our prison systems is not reformative and restorative enough to transform these people who are incarcerated. So then you see that there's a need for us to have alternative sentencing. Number one, to reduce the influx of people who go to prison because already the conditions are not conducive. Number two, to give these people some form of reformation in the crimes that they have committed. So if you check, for example, if an individual has committed a petty offense and this person is sent to prison and he's mixed with hardened criminals, the armed robber, the rapist, and the rest, because mind you, these people are not segregated in the prisons. They are joined together. He forms an association. By the time he's coming out, now our constitution does not allow that this person will get, depending on the crime you committed, you get work to do in a space of 10 years. Sometimes you have stigmatization. Your family will not accept you. So when this person comes out, when he was in prison, he formed an association. Now he's out. Nobody is there to, support this person, help the person to reintegrate. So what does he do? He links back to the people he would be in prison. And by the time you realize somebody who committed a minor offense or a misdemeanor will now be committing robbery among other first degree, second degree felonies.
The instances of recidivism.
Yeah. So now this person now goes back to prison again with higher offenses. So first of all, you see that this is key. Because once we make alternatives to incarceration, we are able to reform these people devoid of the prison conditions that is unfavorable. The second thing is that, again, it will help ease government budget a bit. Because if you check from the Ghana Prison Service, as of today, the feeding grant of a prisoner is 1 cedi 80 pesos for 3 square meals. For 3 square meals, I repeat.
Look,
so now,
I'm laughing, but it's not a laughing matter. I suppose you understand. How much is the bottle of water you buy? But some of you will say, well, the person is in prison. They have committed an offense. Well, sometimes the law catches up with you when you are actually not a guilty person. So, for example, the work that the Justice for All program is doing, you see how people get released. They shouldn't be there, and they get released. So it happens.
Thank you, Samson. So for now, instead of we sending the person into prison to be fed on taxpayers' money, let us make alternatives. Because even with the fines, if these people, example, the poor people, they are unable to pay, automatically sometimes the judgment is such a way that if you're unable to pay, you go to custodial sentence. So let's make ways to put these people in quotes and unquotes to use for the country or the community. So instead of taking you to prison, go and sweep Makwala, distill the gutters, and do other menial jobs that would be beneficial to the state. So for me, these are the key 3 things that I think it is important for us to have an alternative sentencing regime in Ghana.
Thank you. Jonathan, you hold it. I'll come because you have good updates on this. And so, yes, Mina, thank you. I know you are tired, you are weary, but you never give up. In the same way that the RTI Act, you never gave up. For over 2 decades, you pursued it. We just had the Affirmative Action and Gender Equity Bill also passed. It's been on the, as it were, for 2 decades again. So, from where you sit, what will the community sentencing regime do particularly to the poor who get into trouble and get to jail?
Thanks once again, Samson. I think it will be a great benefit to them. Why am I saying this? In the first place, they are already poor. Number one, they're already poor. And some of these are guardians. They come from families. They look after people. So the moment you incarcerate such a person, it means that other people are suffering. And like you said, the law is an ask. You might go in there, but you might not necessarily be guilty. So you come out and there's stigmatization. Also, you know, our system is set up such that judges are limited in the our sentencing regime is quite adversarial. So, for example, you are fined 50 cedis of, let's say, 500 Ghana, because we've had to pay money for people who've been fined 500 Ghana, who couldn't pay, and they've been asked to serve for 6 months. Imagine such a person is working in an organization. Which organization would keep your job open for you for 6 months? And the mere fact that you are an ex-con, it's a no-no. So for the poor, this will be very, very, very instrumental in their lives. Apart from that, apart from the economic benefits, there's also the social benefits. The children of the poor are stigmatized when they come to, if the person is sentenced to a jail term. The family is stigmatized. You know, for a rich person, a lot of rich people money. Splash the money. People have even forgotten that you actually committed a crime. I mean, that is society for you. And then again, for people who go in there and pick up other bad habits, it affects the family as well, because he comes out, he becomes a thief or something else. And all kinds of things are, the family is targeted because you are from a family. So for me, alternative sentencing would be very, very useful to the poor.
Repeat for us for a very quick education. What are the forms of this kind of community or alternative sentencing that we are talking about?
And we have they have different forms. One of them is you could be asked to provide a service to the community. For example, Sylvester mentioned that if you could be told to go and clean up a place, for example, do cleaning. Another is if you're a professional, you could be asked to do a professional service in the area where you work, but you'll not be paid for it, so it will be unpaid. Another one that comes to mind is educating others like you who have gone into a situation like you've gone to and would have to be jailed. In certain areas, you'll be asked to educate the youth not to go into those areas because of your experience. So at the moment, those are the ones that come to mind.
All right.
So you will not be put to jail. You won't go to jail, but you'll be put to good use for the community to benefit from it.
Thank you. Jonathan, take it from there. When you get to these gatherings, what are the alternatives that you are thinking about? We have seen some of the options mentioned in the previous bill, but in the bill that you are looking at now, what do we have in there? Please
we can't hear you.
Unmute your mic.
I was saying that the question brings us to some kind of fear that also the public have. While we are dealing with punishing and reforming criminals, we're also looking at national security and public safety. So based on the question you asked, let me just drop it that not every offense qualifies to be part of, to be considered a community service.
Exactly.
There are the first degree felonies. They are completely out. Robbery, murder, all these ones are out, so that the public don't panic that somebody might have gone to kill someone, and then we are going to ask the person to go and sweep Makola or go and do this. That we must clear the airwaves. In going into details, community service is community service. Whenever you are sentenced to a community service, the bill gives processes for which you go through. There are probation officers, they will write inquiry reports, they will look at your strength, they will look at the disability, they will look at everything before the judge gives you that community service. And if you are looking at the forms, there are many, from working in a hospital to working in the district assembly, from working on the street. These are all categories based on the available needs of that constituency or district. Then the probation officer will put it before the judge, and the judge will then sentence you accordingly. So when you look at the current law, we probably fashion it a bit around that of Zimbabwe, because I was personally part of those who did the research before the consultant did the draft. And if you look at it, it cut a lot of costs. It's not something from US or UK that has been adapted. And we have also hinged the draft. If I say we, I'm talking about stakeholders, including the ministry, so on the local government system, so that we don't bring about another bureaucratic elephant called commission and etc., where it becomes difficult for the implementation of the law. It becomes difficult for us to implement the law. So in terms of this, I will say that these are the unique things that we have all agreed, and the bill, when it comes to fruition, will have an effective implementation to that effect.
Right. And in community sentencing, there's also psychological care, rehabilitation processes are all provided. And for those of you who have had the benefit of our series on this platform, you'd have heard us speak about all of those things. And in fact, Deputy Attorney General Tia Yeboah agreeing to the suggestion strongly that there's no need to create another bureaucracy, but to try and fit it into the assembly concept so that it could be continued that way. You're here on the law. We are continuing our discussion on justice for all, and today we are looking at alternative sentencing, particularly community sentencing, for which Ghana has a bill, a draft that it is looking at. We have had one which didn't see the light of day, and it's been over 2 decades and still in the discussion. The current Attorney General has, indicated strong commitment to have this passed, but we have about 5 months or so to the Parliament ending its life. On this show, Mina Mensah, Director, Africa's Office of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative. Jonathan Osei is founder and executive director, the Pause Foundation, facilitators of the Justice for All program, and he is joined by his colleague, who is Sylvester Anthony Apia Honey. So we are going to open the phone line shortly for you to join to tell us your views of this and whether you think it should be done as quickly as possible or not. And last week, we were unable to take some of your questions on the Justice for All. So we will open the phone line so you can join and let us enjoy that. Now, Sylvester, going through the country's prisons and helping through the Justice for All program to release people, how significant will community sentencing be when you look at the Justice for All and what it does?
Thank you very much, Samson. It is significant because when you check our criminal justice delivery system, we all know that it is probably marred with a lot of challenges, backlog of cases, inadequate lawyers, because when you look at legal aid, once an offender is poor and he's unable to afford the services of a lawyer, legal aid comes in. But now in 2019, legal aid had about 23 lawyers for the whole nation. But now I'm told that they are increased to about 50. I stand to be corrected, but 50 people serving a population of about 30 million. It's woefully inadequate.
Check the budget they had. That's the most important.
It's woefully inadequate.
So last time I heard about their budget.
I don't know about their budget.
It's such a crying shame.
It is. So it is significant because when community service get passed, the first thing is that you don't get people into the prisons for Justice for All to go and deal with them. Because from the beginning, Justice for All was like an ad hoc way of dealing with the issues in the criminal justice system. So the non-custodial sentencing regime, particularly community service, what it will do is that when a petty offense is committed, the individual or the offender will not be pushed into incarceration. So he gets to serve the community. Other non-custodial sentences that I want to touch briefly on, we've done some work on. One is parole. So if you check, parole is a constitutional provision. So currently, we've done some work with the Ghana Prison Service, and they are currently working on their bill to kind of get their law to operationalize parole so that even those who are in prison will get the opportunity to reform or come out through the parole system. And then other fines that we know of which people are unable to pay, and sometimes we have some benefactors coming to the aid of these people. So community service or alternatives to incarceration is key, because government gets to save money from its budget so that we can push it to maybe hospitals and other things. We get to reform the individual. The individual still has the ties with the family.
That's right.
It is not cut off. He has the ties with the family.
And the stigma with prison is removed.
Exactly. And mind you, once you go to prison, I always say, like you said, the stigma, when you come out, if you are not careful, psychologically, you will not be there. And that is another area that we need to do a lot of work on, because reintegration is a problem. And that is why recidivism is occurring.
That's right.
So that is the very, very important thing we need to do as a country.
It's unfortunate, isn't it, that people get their liberty through justice for all. And then some other time they are found to have committed a crime again. And then some members of the community say, we told you this justice for all should not be for, certain people. They don't deserve it.
Of course. But if you also check, the Justice for All has released people who were genuinely innocent.
That's
and has been on remand for a number of years. Key among them, the longest person is Zoro Kuta.
Yeah.
He had spent about 20 years on remand without trial. And then another one current one was Kobna Hulati, who was discharged under the chairmanship of Justice Angelina Mensah Homia. This individual was convicted. But later, the report came out that he's innocent, and the girlfriend died as a result of pneumonia. And the said police officers, that is not to say that all police officers are like that. Let me please clarify that.
Yeah, Jonathan told the story last week. Yeah.
And so the Justice for what it does is that the Justice for finds a way to kind of deal with the backlog of cases.
Right.
But whilst that is happening, people are being arrested every day.
Yeah, that's true. The president was very unhappy. Last week we played you his voice when at a ceremony to, as it were, acknowledge and commend those who were behind the Justice for All, and where Jonathan was also singled out for praise. There was a woman who, for one cedi, she got to jail. Can you imagine? Right. Thank you very much. So we're opening the phone lines now. You can join us with your questions and your contributions as well. Now, Jonathan, are we done with this year's cycle of the Justice for All program? Where are we now, and what's going on?
We are supposed to hit Sunyani prisons, and under the chairmanship of Justice Angelina Mensah Humia, we will add additional 2 or 3 prisons as directed by the Chief Justice, and then we have the year plan to end the year very successfully and move to another. But looking at what Sylvester, the question you posed and the way Sylvester handled it so nicely, just let me add one and say that when you look at the Justice for All, I know that we are dealing with remand prisoners. And so when you look at the community service, we are looking at people who have been convicted on minor offenses or misdemeanors.
That's right.
So if you look at the reason why Paul's Foundation even came in to facilitate the first draft, it was because we all have contributed to the drastic reduction in the remand population from 33% to currently 10.8% per the statistics from Ghana prisons. But at the same time, the convict prisoners, as at the time of the Justice for All 2007, the convict prisoners were around a little over almost 15,000. But while now we have the remand population down, the convict is also moving steadily. So that means there has been an intervention, Justice for All, to deal with remandees, but convict prisoners were not benefiting, and any of them would have received a miscarriage of justice or excessive sentence, and therefore they also needed an intervention. That is why the community service will then cut the inflow of minor offenders and will then reduce the congestion rate, which last week I was giving the statistics, even just for Nsawam and Kumasi. Some of them, we have over 100% overcrowding rate. That is different from the overall overcrowding rate in prisons. To some specific facilities, we have over 100 to 200 overcrowding rate. That is how bad some of them may look like. So I just wanted to bring a little
Marvin Quinn, you are calling us from Cape Coast. Let's hear you.
Yes, so thank you for having me. My question is, what are the offenses that could merit this alternative sentence?
Very minor offenses. Very minor offenses. The offenses that we deem as misdemeanors, they are not serious offenses. Okay, you can call us and we will share. So, look, Jonathan, what do you know is holding this bill back so that we are likely to face the situation where the previous bill faced?
I leave that to you, because what is left now is that it is at cabinet level.
All right.
And you can see Auntie Mina, myself, and all stakeholders are not happy. It is an appeal we can just make to the Ministry of Interior and then Attorney General's office and the Minister for Justice, that this one, a lot of work have gone on with all stakeholders. They should expedite action from cabinet level. It get to Parliament. We are willing to support the process again to make sure we get it through before campaign gets so busy. At the end of the day, our aim is to look at that tag that all of us have brought about, what is criminalization of poverty. It is the poor who will suffer. If you look at what Auntie Mina said, if you hear Sylvester, if you hear what I'm saying, it is the fact that most of us, our laws are criminalizing poverty, not the fact that there is crime. There are several examples to that effect that later on we can give. So we leave it to you.
All right. Mina, I'll come to you shortly. Jonathan is just using your choicest phrase, criminalization of poverty. Mr. J, you're calling us from Kronom in Kumasi. Let's hear you.
Yeah, please, I'm happy to hear this topic being discussed. A lot of people have been convicted for minor offenses and are serving prison sentences, and then with their followers and their dependents perishing backwards in the house.
That's right.
So I would suggest this be put out on social media for a trend or something, so that the government will be aware of it, and then the major stakeholders will join in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. J. So, Mina, at this point, what do you say? Do you feel we are going to end the year without it one more time? And that will mean the process, like Jonathan says, has to start all over again with a new parliament.
If we don't push, if we don't make noise, we might have to. Of course, there might be goodwill from government. That's why Jonathan said we are appealing. You see, it is not about whether somebody has committed an offense or not. It's about the way Ghana treats its poor people who are in conflict with the law. And as far back as 2003, the Ouagadougou Plan of Action talked about, let's decongest the prisons. And there are certain offenses in our books that we can actually decriminalize. And we are still at it. In fact, the recent AU model law principles on decriminalization said, listen, if you can't decriminalize, find alternatives to the criminalization of some of these offenses. And government, it will help government. It will cut down on the cost and improve prison conditions. So if we don't bring out the positives, because a lot of people are looking at, hey, we are letting out criminals. No, that's not what it's all about.
Yeah, so
it is about ensuring
so
that we
let's give them an example right away. You're hawking. The bylaws say you should not hawk. The person who is doing the hawking, that's their livelihood. That's the only thing they know to do to survive. And then they are caught. You see them, is it Abaye? They whip them up, they seize their wares, and then take them to court. They are fined, they are asked to pay maybe 600 cedis or even less. And they can't find that money. If they had that money, they would not be on the street in the first place. And then they are taken in. So these are the kind of offenses we are talking about. Matthew, you are calling us from Pong. What do you have to say? Did we lose Matthew? Okay, Matthew, call back. Mina, you can finish what you were saying.
Yes, so you see, it's about criminalizing even public spaces. Sometimes, like you said, fines, and some even traffic offenses. For example, a driver drives without a driver's license. It is an offense. But the point is, it is his livelihood. You arrest him, you place him in jail, he serves his term, he comes back, he cannot do the license, he doesn't have the money. What does he do? So there's...
Okay, Mina's line just got frozen. Ebenezer. Hi, Ebenezer. You are calling right here from Accra, in Accra.
Hello, Samson. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Go ahead. Let's hear you.
Good. I have a question for you under the alternative sentencing program that we are discussing. I'm asking whether under this law there will be room for a convict to use a paid labor to execute the punishment that has been meted out to that person.
Exactly.
For example, you've been punished to clear a drainage. Can you use paid labor to execute that?
Okay, restate your question. But it's exactly the point for community sentencing. Restate your question.
Yeah, so I'm asking, can a convict use paid labor to execute the punishment that has been meted out?
Exactly.
To him or her?
Exactly. That's the point. That's the purpose of community sentencing. Okay. So the last time when we did this for you, we showed you this instance in Kenya. There's a lady who got into trouble, and her community service was to go and work in a hospital. So she went to help filing processes. By the time she was done with that service, the hospital wanted to employ her. So she was employed.
Nice.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Samson, let me clarify that the convict that he said, he should take into consideration that once you committed offense and you are arrested and the court convict you, that is when you'll be sentenced. If we have the bill, you have to do community service.
That's right.
Not the people who are already in prison.
That's correct.
I wanted to make that clarity.
That's correct.
And once you are using that skilled labor to render the community service, like Auntie Mina rightly said, you do that without earning any allowance or income. So that one too should be clear. So that is something I want to quickly add.
Maybe there could be some arrangement, you get something small, but not, say you're a doctor and you are earning, say, 20,000 a month, and you get into trouble, and instead of putting you into jail, we say, you go to this hospital and work. But we'll give you maybe 1,000 cedis to take care of your fuel for the period that you serve. Will you prefer that to go into jail? Yeah. Okay, Kwame Kusi. Kwame Kusi Kwao. You are calling us from where? Is it German?
Yes, German, in the Waterman East constituency.
All right, go ahead, let's hear you.
The fact is, when someone commits a crime, and he really deserves to be punished, irrespective of his status, he will be punished. But criminal crimes, somebody will be asked to clean, say, the hospitals within the area. This guy can jump bail. But what will be the end result?
All right.
He will come back and go to commit serious crime over somewhere. Such people deserve to be really incarcerated. That is it.
So two people are fighting, maybe at the marketplace. Some misunderstanding happens, and one pushes the other, and the other one too replies back, and then they get arrested because they are fighting. They shouldn't be fighting. Someone is assaulted the other. This is not any serious thing. Don't you think they deserve the opportunity of a system that allows them room to reform themselves? Maybe somebody is a breadwinner, somebody is breastfeeding. You heard that story. Kwame, you don't agree? Okay. Let's hear from Ibrahim. Ibrahim, you are calling from Tamale. Let's hear you quickly.
Hello.
Ibrahim, go ahead.
With the discussion, what I see, where I saw that community work can be done is in the construction sector. There are certain construction companies that if they send them there, they can get them to work. Construction, we have various types of work. We have laborers, we have skills.
Okay, thank you, Ibrahim. So, Jonathan, you can hear from many people. They particularly Kwame wanted to understand, how do you deal with someone who is unwilling to do the community service?
The law or the bill, have made provisions for all these. And that is why we went to the regions for the inputs. For example, somebody also has a similar question. I may have some money to pay somebody to do the work on my behalf. All these things have been factored in it. It's because we have a little time. That's why we have not gone clause by clause or looking at the issues one by one. But viewers should also understand that it is not that I am rich. I have committed a crime, so I will pay for somebody to do it.
That's right.
Number two, you have been exempted from going into custody, and your number of years have been converted into hours. And so if you breach it, there are consequences that will have to reappear before the court, and they will deal with you.
That's it.
So we shouldn't see it as that we are being soft, or the law, if passed, will be softer on people. If in the process you violate anything, you are going to be dealt with in the process.
Yeah.
So let us understand that
if you don't want the humane treatment, we throw you into the jail. That's it. Anthony Teshi, let's hear you.
All right, thank you very much. I think this is a very educative program. And I wish that in the next parliament, there should be a bill in place that will help to increase the budget for the Legal Aid Commission. Since there are a lot of crimes that are going on and people don't have funds to get lawyers. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mina, people are concerned, and you remember this came up a lot the last time we brought up this subject for discussion. And I remember Esther particularly being very concerned about that aspect as well. That some people are just, sorry to say, just bad. They don't want help, even if you are helping them.
Well, it's human nature, you know. There are some people you can't help them, because that is why the structures are there. If you are offered a community sentence, you don't do what you're supposed to do. The alternative is to go to jail. And you will go to jail if you keep not adhering to what you're supposed to do. So like Jonathan said, nobody is saying that if somebody commits an offense, we should let the person go. You will be punished, but depending on what offense it is, you do not necessarily have to go to jail. Like you said, if two people are fighting, they've assaulted each other. In any case, they fought. They are the ones who got hurt. Why are you putting them in jail? Get them to do something useful so that we don't spend our money to feed somebody who has decided to disturb the peace, has hurt the other, and then we put them in jail. Then when they come out, and then what?
I come to the studio for very final words, but I'll begin with Jonathan. Jonathan, what will be your very final words looking into the future of alternative sentencing regime for Ghana?
An eye for an eye, as Sylvester said, is not the best to reform people. Let us get hardened criminals arrested and imprisoned. And let us get those who might have made mistakes or committed offense for the first time, which are minor, give them hope to reform and come back to join society in order to curb the issue of recidivism. because the armed robber you may have arrested today may not be as dangerous as a recidivist because he have gone through the system, he knows the terrain, and he may be so dangerous. So in order to avoid recidivism at cost on behalf of government, let us all push for the community service so that that aspect of criminalization of poverty can be reduced, so that if we all find ourselves one day in prison, which we are praying we will not, but everybody is a potential prisoner.
That's
Samson,
right.
Probably you might not you may not have been caught. If you might not have been arrested by the police for jumping a red light and you couldn't pay, it's not because you are good. So everybody is a potential criminal where you have a prisoner, where you have one leg there. And there are innocent people who have been sent there. So it could be you, it could be me. So let us get the reform system to benefit every single person, be it rich or poor. That would be my final submission.
Perfectly said. Perfectly said. Thank you so very much, Jonathan. What a perfect summary. Mina, what would be your final words?
I would want to say that justice is normally served when somebody has been reformed. It is not meant to punish. It is meant to reform people. And at the end of the day, if we look around, it is normally the poor who are at the center of these minor offenses that we are talking about. Very few, you find very, very few people who are rich being arrested for some of these minor offenses that we are talking about, who get incarcerated. If two rich people fight, they'll be fine, they will pay the money. So at the end of the day, they will not end up in jail. So let's be conscious of the fact that there are very poor people who may not be able to afford fines, but who don't necessarily need to be in prison because it affects the family and the society. And when it comes to stigmatization, a whole family would be stigmatized because one person went to jail. So as far as I am concerned, as a nation, we need to look at our legal system and ensure that the poor are not overly punished for the simple reason that they are poor. So that is what I would have to say. And I appeal to the Ministry of Interior and the Aegis Department, the Attorney General Department, please, please, please. Promises are fine, but acting on the promises are better. Thank you.
I know Godfrey Dame personally has committed to this particular bill and making sure that it is passed into law. I'm sure he'll be happy that it becomes one of his legacies. Sylvester, what do you say as we close?
Thank you very much, Samson. And I cannot say this if I leave here because it will interest you to know that Auntie Mina, I did my national service with Auntie Mina, so she mentored me. And Jonathan too has mentored me since my university days till now. So it is actually an honor for me to be on the same platform with them and then have this discussion.
Jonathan told me how good you were and how I could host just you and we'll be fine. So go on.
In my conclusion, Martin Luther King Jr. said something. He says that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. So if indeed the act bends towards justice, let us enact laws like alternative sentencing that will make room for people to reform, while we also give justice to people who are victims, and then make sure that the society is a good place for us to live in, because we can never have an utopian society, but what we can do is that we can make the society a better place for people to reform and give them second chances. Thank you very much, Samson.
Thank you very much. So you're going around still with Justice for All.
Yes.
When you see the people, particularly the poor, that your work leads to the committee that reviews the processes and they are put before judges and they get released, what's normally the feeling like?
Okay, so I was asked this question some time ago before I went to law school. And it's actually the Justice for All since 2014 that inspired me to pursue law. So the feeling is that you know that you are doing something. You are doing a work towards society. But then what you are doing is actually will be the gateway for somebody's freedom or liberty to be granted. So anytime we go, we see people, they get bail, people have been inside for 10 years, 15 years, they are unconditionally discharged. That is the satisfaction I get personally, right. Because at the end of the day, you know that the little thing that you did has contributed to something.
Especially for a person whose offense is a misdemeanor, yes. And they have been on remand for like 10 years. Yes. Meanwhile, if they had been tried, yes. And convicted, the maximum sentence they would have served would have been 3 years.
That's so.
That's unfair. That is injustice.
It is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samson.
Sylvester Anthony Appiah Honey, and also Jonathan Osei-Owusu, who is founder and executive director, Pause Foundation, facilitators of the Justice for All program. And I like the fact that Jonathan is very conscious about the caveats that need to be put in. When we talk about Justice for All, he puts the caveat quickly. It's for remandees. Particularly, that's for them, it's not for everybody. We're talking about community sentencing. He says, don't think if you are convicted for murder, you'll be entitled. It is for misdemeanors, more particularly. Mina Mensah is Director, Africa Office of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative. Our appeal to the President and to the government is that the community sentencing bill should be passed in this parliament. Let's not this parliament expire for us to have 2 bills that were never passed into law. Let's serve the welfare and the interest of the people. I'm Samson Lardy Ayanini. This has been The Law. It's your legal light. It is your health law. Have a good afternoon.